All right. Everybody good? We can see the screen? I'll take that as a yes. So today we're going to talk about Rule 6 and 7. Just so you all know, the rule book is going to be set up exactly like your tackle rule books and exactly like other NFHS produced rule books. So National Federation of High School Sports produced this rule book. We will be using it from here until who knows? But at least for the 25 season, we'll be using NFHS produced rule book. Rule 6 is about our kicking game, so we'll finally get into that. And Rule 7 is about handing, passing, and snapping the ball. The good news about this rule book, those of us who have spent time in other NFHS produced rule books for other sports, it's going to look very familiar. They also, almost without exception, our penalty enforcements are going to be the same as tackle. Not the same yardage, but the same enforcement spots. So if you know your tackle football enforcement spots, enforcing penalties for flag football will be not much more than learning the exceptions like automatic firsts and loss of downs, and then just the related differences, because in flag football, we do not have any 15-yard penalties. We only have 10 and 5-yard penalties. So the kicking game. CIF will have no place kicks. We won't be kicking off to start the game or the second half or after scores. And we will not be kicking field goals. There will be no place kicks and no field goals in the game that we play. This is a by-state adoption that was allowed inside of this rule book. We have adopted for California to not have place kicks and not have field goals for the 2025 season. We will have punting or scrimmage kicks. That's the same thing. A punt and a scrimmage kick are the same thing. We use those terms interchangeable. So if it says punt, you can assume it means scrimmage kick. If it says scrimmage kick, you can assume it says punt. It means punt. All punts must be declared prior to the ball being made ready for play. If declared punt, Team A must kick the ball. And Team B must be given adequate time to substitute and the play clock not be adjusted to save A from a delay of game foul. Now, we shouldn't have issue with this because they have to declare punt prior to the ball being put into play. Our issue will be coaches dragging their feet, not wanting to put the ball in, not wanting to declare, and the white hat or referee standing there with the ball, waiting to put it into play while the coach takes 20 seconds to make up his mind. We're not going to let coaches do that. Coach has about 5 seconds from when they're asked, punt or play, to make a declaration. If they do not make the declaration in a timely manner, we simply put the ball on the ground, put it into play, and they will run a play from scrimmage. If they wish to punt, they have to call a timeout and change their declaration. Okay? Team A, the offense, may only change their declaration after an official's timeout, a charged team timeout, at the end of a period, or if a penalty is enforced. So, for example, if we have encroachment on the defense on a 4th down punt declared play, A can change their declaration after the enforcement of that penalty prior to the ball being made ready for play. Okay? Hopefully that all makes sense. That's all pretty straightforward stuff. We will use in CIF a fair catch. It will look just like all other fair catch signals that we are used to seeing in all other. Sorry. Please stay on mute, y'all. Somebody. CF will use a fair catch signal. It will look just like others that are commonly used, where a waving of one arm above the head signals a fair catch. I do not personally foresee this being used very much because K, the kicking team, cannot cross the line of scrimmage until after the ball is kicked. So unless it's short kicks and these players are struggling with being able to kick the ball, then I don't foresee a place where teams will use fair catch very often. However, we wanted them to have that option, so they will have the option to signal for fair catch. If a fair catch is signaled, then that player is protected to catch the ball. They're protected to catch the ball anyway because they have right of way to the ball to catch, but there is no return after catching that ball. It's dead at the place where it's caught. Okay? They can't attempt to advance the ball. As soon as it's caught and secured, that play is dead. Okay? 631B states that K may never obstruct R's path to the ball. That is the ball in flight or on the ground. So we'll get into this in a few minutes when we talk about restrictions on R and restrictions on K and what they can and cannot do during these punt scrimmage kicks. But R may field a grounded punt. It's the only time in our game where a ball on the ground can be fielded and returned. So the punt can hit the ground, bounce around as many times as it wants to. R can still field that and have opportunity to return it. K can never get in their way when it comes to doing that. Sorry, y'all. My screen is freaking out on me. There we go. Okay, the regulations on K during the scrimmage kick. K must kick the ball from at least 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage. K may not cross the line of scrimmage until the ball is kicked. The ball must be legally snapped during a declared scrimmage kick. And if any K player is moving at the time of the kick, it's considered a false start. So we'll just reiterate again, a false start is a dead ball penalty. We are blowing that play dead if K is moving at the time of the kick. Now, hopefully it should be obvious, but that's any player of K other than the kicker, right? Obviously the kicker needs to be moving. They are free to take the snap, quote, under center. We'll talk about snapping in just a little bit, but K is free to take that snap however they want. The punter is free to step back 5, 10, however many yards they wish. The ball just must be kicked from 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and everyone must be still except for the kicker at the time of the kick. Okay. K, the kicking team, K may catch, touch, or possess a scrimmage kick that has crossed the line of scrimmage. Just like in tackle football, this is called first touching. Any such touching causes the ball to be dead immediately, and R will take possession of the ball at the first touching spot. Now, when we say cause a ball to become dead immediately, there are a couple of exceptions to this. If K touches it, the ball remains in the air and then touches it again. We would have two instances of first touching. R would have the choice to take the ball at either of those places of first touching. It's really the ball grounded to the ground that causes it to be dead, or K possessing the ball. They have to possess it. It can't just be I touched it on the ground and now it's sitting there. And just like in tackle football, K runs down, ball sitting on the ground. They reach down and touch it with their hand, right? They still have secured possession. Technically and officially, the kick has not ended until no one has, again, attempted to retrieve and move that ball. But a ball on the ground is going to be dead. So essentially, any kick, once it's been touched, that is on the ground is going to be dead. I know this sounds like a lot, y'all, but once you start to kind of look at the lists and understand how this is going to play out, it actually is a little easier than it might sound right now. Okay. The one instance where we ignore first touching is when K is blocked into the ball. Okay. For example, if K is blocked into the ball at the receiver's 25-yard line, then picks up the ball and advances it to then R picks up the ball and advances it to the R32. The next play from scrimmage would be R 1st and 8 at the R32 unless the ball's moved by foul. Now, hopefully some of you had your little antennas go up and you're starting to think, well, how can K be blocked into a ball when we have a game that only has screen blocking, which requires no contact, right? So if R has positioned themselves in a place of right of place and K just kind of bumps off of them into the ball, that would be what we're talking about, right? So now we go into contact with impact or contact that doesn't have impact. And remember, we can have legal screen blocking if R has established right of place. We're going to go over a few test questions, and a couple of these will be on your test. I don't remember if I put them in today, actually, but you'll have some test questions that will kind of make you think deeper about this. Okay? When a punt that has crossed the neutral zone and has not yet touched the ground touches a player from R and then is caught by K, it is dead at that spot, and K can possess that ball. This is our one exception. Okay, 616. You guys are going to want to remember this rule because coaches are going to freak out. 616. When a punt that has crossed the neutral zone and not yet touched the ground touches a player from R and is then caught by K, insert before it touches the ground in that spot. It's dead and belongs to K at that spot. Why? Because we haven't had a change of possession. R muffed this punt, obviously, right? R goes up to catch it in the air. The punt has not yet hit the ground. It bounces off of R and bounces right into K's arms. That is going to be K's ball. Everything changes if that punt hits the ground. It's a whole different story if that punt's grounded. But as long as it's in the air and caught by K after it's touched R, K can have that. Okay? Here's the stipulation, right? Because we haven't had a change of possession, K must have achieved the necessary yardage to reach a first down. If they haven't achieved the necessary yardage to reach a first down, then it's still going to be R's ball. It's just now a turnover on downs, rather than the punt, right? Be prepared because we will stop the clock either way on this. We're either stopping the clock because it's a first down or we're stopping the clock because it's a change of possession. Either way, we have a stop clock here. When and how we start the clock will depend on why we stopped it. But if K achieves the necessary yards to get a first down, then we're stopping the clock for first down. If they don't, then we're stopping the clock for a change of possession. R will take over at that spot. Okay. In 6.2, we're really only concerned with Article 1 and Article 1A and then Article 2, mostly because the rest of it talks about field goals and achieving 3-point field goals, and we're not having those. So just know it's a touchback if the scrimmage kick crosses the plane of the end zone. We do not return any kicks that cross the plane of the end zone. Once it breaks that plane, we have a touchback. Okay. It is a safety if a scrimmage kick becomes dead in the kicking team's end zone. So why would this happen? How would this happen? Well, we have a ball snapped over the kicker's head, right? Ball hits the ground. Also know any failed snap that hits the ground, it doesn't matter if it's a second down, third down, fourth down, and we have a declared punt. If a snap hits the ground, the ball is dead at that spot and belongs to whichever team it should belong to based off of the result of the play. When a scrimmage kick does not cross the neutral zone, okay, there's a whole lot in 6 as you read it, and I'll tell you right now, Rule 6 is only 2 pages long in your rule book, so it's not much. 2 pages of information to really digest and understand. I believe you all can do that. However, it doesn't really talk about what we do if the ball doesn't cross the neutral zone. Just know that in California, when a scrimmage kick does not cross the neutral zone, we're going to have it dead at the spot where it's touched or possessed by either team, or where it hits the ground and then is touched or possessed by either team. We don't want R trying to return those kicks because there are going to be too many players around that area and too great a risk of injury. So the punt has to cross the neutral zone for it to become a legal punt. If it hits the ground anywhere else behind the neutral zone, then we got a dead ball and R is going to take over at that spot. All right, let's talk about what R has to do during these scrimmage kicks. R may not cross their own line of scrimmage. So we've talked before about the fact that we have 2 line of scrimmages now, right? We have a line of scrimmage that the nose of the ball is sitting on that is A or K. That is their line of scrimmage. 1 yard from that spot, we have another line of scrimmage that will be R or B, defense, line of scrimmage. We then have a 1 yard. This creates a 1 yard neutral zone. Okay. R may not cross into that neutral zone. They cannot cross their line of scrimmage until the ball is kicked. That line of scrimmage is a plane of glass extending up into infinity. Okay. That becomes important when we talk about this next thing where R may block a scrimmage kick. Okay, the touching of a scrimmage kick is ignored if it is in or behind the 1 yard neutral zone. So I am on defense, scrimmage kick, punt is declared. I happen to be 6'1" and an amazing athlete, and I'm standing right at the edge of my line of scrimmage for defense. I'm on R now. Receivers, and a low scrimmage kick starts coming. I move 2 steps to my left, get my big arms up in there, and I get a hand on that ball and knock it. Okay. We will ignore that touching of the ball and see where the ball goes, right? If the ball still travels 10, 15 yards downfield, we're going to let R pick up that grounded ball and run it back just as if there was no touching, because we ignore that touching on the blocked punt as long as it's like this. Okay. If the ball does not cross the neutral zone, meaning now I've blocked it and I actually bat it back in to R's across my own restraining line into the backfield, into the offensive backfield, then as we just talked about, we have a dead ball scenario there because the kick did not cross the neutral zone. Okay. So that plane of glass, and I am that, 6 foot tall young woman standing at that line to attempt to block that kick. I can jump up and down and I can do whatever I want to do to try to block that kick. What I cannot do is reach over that plane of glass. Okay. So my arms cannot extend forward and cross into the neutral zone. They have to stay straight up and down, and I cannot cross and touch into that plane of glass that is my line of scrimmage as a defender. Okay. R may field any grounded punt and return it. Ball's kicked, it hits the ground, it bounces another 4 or 5 yards downfield. Any R receiver can run up, pick that ball up off the ground, and begin to return it. Okay. When any scrimmage kick that has been touched by a player and then touches the ground, it's dead at that spot. So, for example, I'm R, I go to field a scrimmage kick out of the air and I muff it, and it falls out of my hands and hits the ground. We have the end of the kick right there. Ball's dead. That's where we're starting the next series of plays. Okay. I can muff that as long as it doesn't touch the ground. So I can muff it, bat it up in the air a little bit, try to get it secured. As long as that ball never touches the ground, I can secure possession of that muff and begin my return of that punt. And then we already talked about any scrimmage kick that crosses the plane of the goal line is a touchback. Okay, let's talk about a few questions then. So as we start to move in and kind of start to talk about some of these questions, I just want you all to know you just might be seeing these questions come up again somewhere very soon. So if you want to be taking notes, please do. If you want to be writing a few things down, that's great. But chances are very, very good that you will see a lot of these questions again soon. And just so you all know, when these test questions are being written, essentially your summer study guide is to help you understand and be able to define the terms that you need to be able to use out of your new rule book.
Really?
So that's what we're hoping you get out of your summer study guide, is being able to define terms. Then when you take your qualification exam, you kind of understand those definitions better. And now we ask you to put them into scenarios and put it to work. Okay. So learn the terminology first, then become critical thinkers about how I apply that terminology that I've just learned. That's how your 2 tests, your summer study guide and your qualification exam, are going to look just a little bit different, just so you know. Okay, so a punt must be declared before the snap. This is obviously true because we just talked about this. And I will reiterate once again, if the coach is delaying declaring, then the ball is put in play and they are running a play for 4th down. We don't ever make the assumption that they will punt. We always make the assumption that they are going to run a play. Okay. And we do not let them delay more than 4 or 5 seconds. Once they've been asked, maybe if I'm kind, I'll turn around and ask one more time, but that's something you kind of want to talk to your coaches about, especially early in the season in your pregame conferences. Coach, if you want to punt on 4th down, I need to know immediately and before the ball goes down on the ground. for the next play. Okay. Once a punt is declared, it may not be withdrawn. This answer is false. There are 4 situations in which it can be changed, and we outlined those. If the kicking team touches the punt before the receiving team, the result is
We have like a little watering pot.
think about that one for just a minute. If kicking team touches a punt before the receiving, the result is dead ball at the spot of first touch. Okay. The only way we can have multiple spots of first touching is if the ball hasn't ever touched the ground. And the only way K can ever possess the punt is if it is muffed into the air by R and secured by K before it touches the ground. Okay. The receiving team may return a punt unless as you read through these answers, again, to help everyone just kind of become better test takers, thinking about what each of these might mean, right? Doesn't really matter if it's kicked too short. We've already talked long and hard about how the ball can hit the ground. We also covered how if it's muffed, they can still secure it. So the only reason I couldn't return a punt is if I made a fair catch signal. Okay, we don't return if a fair catch signal is made. And then we go into muff again. This is where understanding and defining your terms is important. So a muffed punt is a live ball, a dead ball, a touchdown, or a delay of game. A muffed punt is a live ball. What makes it dead? When it hits the ground. And this should be pretty clear because that's the case for everything in flag football except an untouched punt. Okay, anytime the ball hits the ground in our game, it's a dead ball, except an untouched punt. Okay. All right, let's get some critical thinking in. Okay, 4th and 15 at the A25. Punt has been declared. During the kick, a Team K player moves into the path of a Team R player attempting to catch the kick in flight at the B28 and obstructs R from fielding the kick. The ball hits the ground at the B30 where a Team K player possesses it. The next play from scrimmage will be, so if we go backwards through this, right? The ball hits the ground at the B30. We have a ball dead at that spot, right? What else? And it's possessed by K. So ball that's hit the ground now possessed by K. K cannot possess that ball. They cannot return it. It's first touching at that spot. We have a spot of first touching at the 30. Okay, then we go backwards a little bit further into this. We have K obstructing the path of R attempting to field the kick at the B28. So we have a foul here. I know we didn't talk about fouls or penalty enforcements, right? But that's what we have, right? Everybody following me so far? So as we talk through this, our next play from scrimmage would be And because we didn't talk about fouls, I guess I should share with you all. On this obstruction, they obstructing them being able to field the ball. It's a foul on K, which means R could have options here. R does have the option to make them go back and kick it again in this particular instance. And again, I understand we didn't talk about penalty enforcements, but just so you know, that's one of the caveats. If we have them be the path being obstructed, R's path being obstructed to catch or field a punt, that R has the option to have that enforced. So in this instance, right, R can choose either one or two. We'll enforce the penalty from where the foul, the spot of the foul. So we're going to have an option of A, where it could be 1st and 2 at the B38, or we'd have an option of making K kick again, 4th and 25 at the A15. Okay. Okay, 4th and 15 at the 25. Punt has been declared. R sets a legal screen block at the B30 where a K player is bumped into touching the ball in flight. The ball then hits the ground and bounces to the B25 where R fields it and returns it to the B28. R will take possession where? Well, we did talk about how if a K player is blocked into a ball, we ignore that first touching. So that's the only thing that happened during this play. And it was very clearly stated that this was a legal screen block, meaning this player must have been perfectly still, holding their right of place, and K just bumped them. We're really trying to steer away from using the word incidental contact. I don't like that word when it comes to this. We had contact without impact on the play. That's what we had. Okay. Try to start using that terminology. If we're all saying it the same way, we're teaching the coaches how we're going to talk about it in this manner. So we had contact without impact on the play. Coaches will understand that. Therefore, we don't have a foul, right? R fielded this ball cleanly and it was returned to the B28. Our next play is going to be from the B28. Okay. Now let's talk about some fun stuff. So one of the biggest issues that I keep hearing from coaches who, and I guess some officials as well, as I get feedback about their concerns about a rule book that they haven't even seen, which is interesting. But one of the biggest concerns is that screen blocking downfield is going to be a big problem. And I've even heard a couple of people use the word bloodbath, right? There's going to be way too much contact. People are going to get hurt. It's just going to be a huge amount of injuries. I need you all to understand that we are not going to let that be the case, because we are going to throw our flags, and I'm going to teach you exactly what we're going to throw our flags for and how difficult it is to screen block on these punt plays and screen block downfield. Okay. So really quickly, the definition of illegal screen blocking is taking the position to obstruct the path of an opponent without contacting the opponent or any part of the blocker's body. We're going to talk a lot about paths. I'm going to show you a few videos in just a minute so that we can really clean this up and you guys understand hopefully more clearly how this is going to be called. The screen blocker is allowed to move along a line until the defender has crossed that line and without contacting the screen blocker. We'll talk, we showed some pictures about that. I can show you a few more, but just remember, this is all not new stuff if you were in the meeting a couple of weeks ago or if you've watched that video on YouTube, right? When considering blocking downfield or blocking during a punt return, the defender, i.e. the person moving toward the ball carrier, is always going to have the right of way to the ball carrier. Always. going to have the right of way. Therefore, to be a legal screen block, the blocker must establish right of place and meet all of the other requirements of a legal screen block. Okay, so essentially what we're saying here is that the blocker has got to be still because we are giving the defender trump card on right of way. And if both are trying to claim right of way, somebody has to trump right of way. So the screen blocker loses out on that. Therefore, they have to establish right of place in order to trump the defender's right of way. Okay, and to establish right of place, I essentially have to not be moving because that's my place. Okay, I hope this is making sense. And like I said, we're going to look at a couple of videos that are going to hopefully make it seem even more clear. All right, so we learned already last week, right of place always supersedes right of way. We just learned that right of way of the defender going to the ball carrier always supersedes right of way of the screen blocker should the screen blocker be moving. Okay. This is a 2-minute video with some explanations written in it. So I'm going to be quiet and let you watch. Okay, so several times at half speed, a few times at full speed. Uh, I do want to give you all a chance to ask any questions in particular, but we're going to wait until after we watch one more video that has a little bit more contact. Oh, okay, one more. Okay. Let me say before I let you all ask, we probably only have time for 2 or 3 questions just to help clean this up just a little bit for you all. And just to see if by chance we have anything. Um, so in the first video, well, in both videos, just so you know, these players, as I was attempting to create these videos with them, I asked them to move at about 50, 60% speed. And hopefully you all could kind of get an idea of how difficult it is to, create right of place on that on a line and then just hold that right of place because the defender is going to change their path based off of where the ball carrier is going and where you set up as a screen blocker, wherever you set up your right of place, right? We saw that in that second video with the middle screen blocker and that defender. She changed her right of place, then screen blocker starts reaching out and grabbing her with her right arm. Um, if these players are moving at full speed, it becomes much more difficult for them to create legal screen blocks. So just so you all know, there are states and the NAIA that have been playing with this screen blocking rule as it is for quite some time, and as we have it now, and they do not see very much blocking attempted on punt returns or blocking downfield because it very, very, very often results in a foul on the screen blocker. Now, obviously, should that screen blocker establish right of place and a defender just goes right through them, then we have an illegal contact foul on the defense. And that does happen. But more often than not, it's just too hard to establish a right of place that isn't adjusted for very quickly by the defender and to allow them to make any kind of legal screen block. So please don't talk over each other, but if 1 or 2 of you have quick questions, let's answer those now because I want to make sure everyone understands this. Actually, let me pull up the chat. Paul Snyder, on the first question, doesn't the punt have to be declared before the ready for play, making the answer false? Did I read that one incorrectly? Yes, you're correct, Paul. Sorry. I misspoke. Um, a muffed punt is dead once it hits the ground. Yes, because it has touched a player. If it touches any player and then hits the ground, we have it dead at that spot. The only time we continue to have a live ball on a punt, right? They can muff it, but once it hit and secure it before it touches the ground, but once it hits the ground, that's it. Derek Brown, is flag screen blocking similar in nature to basketball block charge scenario? I will say yes, Derek. However, we want to use the terminology that's been placed before us, right? We want to be using contact with impact when we start talking about whether contact should be a foul. We want to be using right of place and right of way. Those were never words or phrases that I was taught in basketball officiating when I came to legal or illegal screening in basketball. So, yeah, it's not unsimilar, but often used for very different purposes. So we need to think about them just a little bit different. Okay. On a muffed kick, if K bobbles a catch and then say they fully possess the ball 5 yards further downfield, it's ball spotted at the spot where K possesses the ball or at the spot where the ball will catch. For K, it's all about first touching. Where did they first touch the ball? Okay. And if in this instance, we would have multiple spots of first touch because the ball hasn't touched the ground yet. So I may need to have two bean bags down on different spots here. I would have multiple spots of first touching. R would have the option to take any of those spots of first touching. Okay. This would be a scenario when I would have more than one spot of first touching. Again, so that was Aaron Salt's question if you're looking through the chat. Are players allowed to dive for balls rolling around on the ground, right? So here's what we will never have, right? K cannot get in the way. They cannot obstruct R's path to field a punt, whether it's on the ground or in the air. So K has got to get out of the way. If they obstruct R's path to the ball, then we have a foul. So we will never see, or should never see, players diving around trying to secure a ball. Because if the ball has yet to be touched and R is moving on a path to that ball, K has to get the heck out of the way, right? We have another question about where to access the rule book. You've got to check with your local units, right? So contact your instructional chairman in your local unit or your president and find out how and where you can get your hands on the rule book. Oh, Art, go ahead, let them know. Art, you're on mute. You got info about where they can get rule books?
Okay, there you go. Contact your unit ICs. I know they've been making arrangements with Kenny I to pick up the rule books from him to be distributed to all the units. So I know some of them have already gotten them, and I know there many meetings are being set up for distribution of the rule books. So just contact your particular unit's IC or secretary treasurer.
Thanks,
So,
Art. Appreciate
um,
that.
I have a question
Yeah.
back okay, back to the muffs of a
Mhm.
kick. Okay. So make sure everybody understands the ball's kicked and our player is going to receive the ball and bounces off her shoulder, her arms, whatever, hits the ground. It is dead, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Next scenario, because everybody's all familiar with a muff, thinking they're going to possess the ball with their hands. Ball's kicked. Now it hits the ground. It's still live. It's rolling around. And let's say it hits the receiver's leg. And from what I'm reading in the rule book, that's considered a touch or a muff. So after it hits their leg, then the ball is declared dead, correct?
Correct. Because the
Okay.
ball has touched the ground. So the
Cor-
only way a ball remains live on a muff is if it hasn't touched the ground or after it's touched any player. There's a lot in the rule book about once it's touched a player and touched the ground, then it's going to be dead.
Yeah, just want to make sure everybody
Yeah.
understands that. It's not
Awesome.
always a scenario of a receiver trying to catch the ball. It could be hitting the ground and hit their leg, and then it hits the ground again, then it's dead.
Yes.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks, Art.
You're
Appreciate that.
welcome.
Lots of questions in here about the penalties. I'm gonna let you all just kind of, I'm sorry to keep you hanging on about what penalty enforcements are going to be, but there's an entire section about penalty enforcements in our rule book. Rule 10 is all about penalty enforcements. I'm going to fly through snapping the ball really quickly so we can get just a couple of more slides in. And then I'm going to let you go. So lots of questions about snapping the ball. Can they still side snap? Can they still do these things? So here's what we need to have happen, right? The snap is a legal act of passing the ball backwards from its position on the ground ahead of the snapper's body. That's in 234 definitions. 234 definitions. Then in 711, it says the snapper may be over the ball, but the feet must be behind the neutral zone, and no part of the snapper may be beyond the foremost point of the ball. Okay? In other words, the snapper's head can't be hanging out in the neutral zone while their body's out and over the ball. Please err on the side of what 2.34 says versus what 711 says. We want them back behind the ball. Okay? Everything after that is exactly the same, and those are probably also exactly the same as it is in the tackle rulebook, right? So I can lift and laterally rotate, but I can't rotate end for end, and I have to keep the long axis of the ball at 90 degrees to the line of scrimmage. After touching the ball, this is where we're going to get into problems because these girls are used to bending over and picking up the ball, then putting it back down on the spot, then turning around and taking their hands off of it to look at their quarterback. Once they touch the ball, they cannot remove their hands from the ball. They can't simulate the snap. They have to pause before the snap. And after making an adjustment of the ball to turn the laces or something like that, they can't move the ball again at all. So regulations on the snapper get a lot tighter than we have been in California for the last 2 years. It's going to take an adjustment time, and we need to be helping to educate our coaches and helping them educate the people who will be snapping the ball. Now, I don't want to hear a word about the picture because I was quick trying to make all this happen. But a side snap is still going to be legal. There's nothing that says that I have to snap the ball between my legs. But the side snap needs to look something like this, right? My body must be behind the ball. The long axis of the ball must be 90 degrees to the line of scrimmage. Now, you'll notice how the ball's tilted up on its end. In doing that, I haven't changed the long axis of the ball in 90 degrees to the line of scrimmage, right? All I've done is tilted up on its end. We allow tackle football players to do this. Our snapping regulations are the same as tackle football players. They can tilt the ball up on its end. They can grasp it on one end with their hand just like that. Everything is the same, okay? For example, on these two pictures, right? The ball is obviously at a 90-degree angle at the picture on the left, right? If the edge of the rug is the line of scrimmage, then that's what our 90-degree angle looks like. If in my imagination, I think about the fact that I just tilted up on its end, I haven't changed that 90-degree axis to the line of scrimmage. The only way I change that 90-degree axis is if I do something like the picture on the right-hand side, where now I've rotated the ball and the long axis of the ball is now no longer at a right angle to the line of scrimmage, okay? So simply tipping the ball up on its nose doesn't make it illegal. It's the turning it to the side, like the image on the right, that makes it illegal, okay? I do have some more questions, but we are going to we're going to call it a night. But what that means is the quiz that I've created that I am about to put in the chat, you may not know some answers to. So I apologize for that. Let me grab the link really quickly and get it in the chat. One more question in there. Jim McCann, if snapper puts both hands on the ball, can they legally remove one hand? It's hand or hands. So if they go down with both hands, then both hands have to stay on the ball, right? If they put one hand down on the ball, then one hand has to stay on the ball. Just like in our tackle football games, right? That snapper goes down, puts his hand on the ball. He can point around and point out defensive things. The girls now have the exact same regulations, right? Just a reminder really quickly, you have to click on the link in the Google, um, in the chat right now. You have to go and fill out that Google form if you want me to make sure you get credit for this meeting. I will send a list of everyone who fills out the Google form. There are test questions in there. Don't worry, there's no regulation about getting them right or wrong. This is simply just to test your knowledge. If you have trouble with the link, shoot your unit, your instructional chairman an email, let them know you're here, and if they need to verify with me, I'll do that. Should be able to click on that Google link, and for the next 20 minutes or so, I'll be checking my email. So if you don't get access to the Google link, it's CA, flag football. So California, CA like the state, flag football @gmail.com.